Hello, this is Nick Bogacz. Welcome back to the Business Equation Podcast. I have a very special guest today, Jeff Heggie. Jeff has been an entrepreneur all his life and comes with a diverse background. He spent a number of years as a professional rodeo cowboy, spent some time in the banking industry, real estate, and has coached basketball for the past 20 years. In 2005, he walked away from a great job as a bank manager to start making rocks. He founded Kodiak Mountain Store with one of his mentors, which was a company that manufactured artificial stone veneer. As they faced a number of challenges in the building industry since 2005, they pivoted a number of times. They're no longer in the manufacturing side of the business and now focus on distribution with a focus on Southern Alberta, and Phoenix. Over the years, Jeff has had the opportunity to mentor and coach many other entrepreneurs. With his years of entrepreneurial experience, along with his banking experience and much training, this has become a passion for Jeff. He still operates as the CEO of Kodiak Mountain Store, but also puts a lot of focus into his coaching, courses, and masterminds to help other entrepreneurs develop the mindset and tools required to take their lives and businesses to the next level. Jeff, we're super happy to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Nick, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to be here.
Sounds like you have a very vast background. We love when we get a guest on that we can kind of give an inspiration story. And sounds like from rodeo cowboy to selling stones, sounds like a pretty interesting ride.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a lot of different things in my background, going from being a cowboy to a bank manager to making rock. It's been pretty awesome. And now having the opportunity to help other entrepreneurs on their journey has been really rewarding, and I've enjoyed it.
You know, that's what I found too is, you know, as I become more successful in my business, that was the main reason I decided to start the Business Equation podcast, because it really gives me an opportunity to be able to help other entrepreneurs. So I was really excited to have you on the show today, because it seems like your passion as of late has been very similar. So we'll just dive right on into it. So could you tell us what you currently offer and what you're doing, and what you've seen with the COVID-19, how you've been able to really kind of pivot and adapt to what's been going on?
So with my coaching business, it's been interesting. The people that I've been doing the one-on-one coaching with and whatnot before COVID hit, we've been able to continue on and make some great adjustments for them to keep their businesses going and do some really great things. But there's a couple things I did right when we first were starting to see the impact of COVID. I put together a short training. I just call it my Momentum series. It's on jeffheggie.com. And it's more of a mindset thing and setting goals, because, you know, anytime, you know, we've never been in a situation like this, but how many times have we been through tragedies in history, and how many times do we see amazing things come out of it, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we have to realize is that, yeah, there's going to be some hard times, there's going to be some tragedies, but there's also going to be people that come out of this shining because they were looking for those opportunities and whatnot. So that was the first thing I did, was putting that momentum training together. But then I also, as I was recognizing that more and more people were going to be doing more online or more from home and stuff like that, I worked on one of my marketing programs that I first wanted to put it together just on, you know, for so many people that I work with really don't do their online stuff right. You know, entrepreneurs will start a business and they put so much into getting a website up and running, and then they don't even look at it for 5 years. So I thought, you know, I want to put something together to help entrepreneurs realize that they've got a tool there that they need to utilize to help generate leads and help, you know, make conversions and whatnot. But then as I got into it, it was hard to just put that together without adding in all the other stuff that I wanted to talk about. So it turned into a bigger course than I had originally intended. And then it was really cool because, you know, through my efforts in my mastermind group and stuff like that, and I was talking about it, there is other people that just said, hey, let me add into that. And so the bonus material that I've been able to add into that has been outstanding as well. You know, one of my Needham Solutions, who's in my mastermind group, they do all the digital marketing and building websites and stuff. And they said, you know what, if that's what your focus is, let us put something in there that we'll give a free 2-hour consultation for anyone. So it's really turned into a really good course that is going to be able to help a lot of people as they're trying to figure out how to get through these tougher times.
That makes a lot of sense. I think what I found out is a lot of things that maybe I'll do really well, I take for granted that there's other entrepreneurs out there that are struggling to do the things that we take for granted or think that are easy. So I think you're right. Like a website, for example, there's certain things that maybe people just check off their box, but they don't take the time to actually follow up and make sure that it's current and looking at it. So I guess that goes out to the listeners. If you haven't looked at your website in a while, it's a good time to start, would be right now. But
absolutely.
Your business sounds fabulous. You know, I was really intrigued. Like, I think it's one of those businesses that maybe most people don't think that there's such big business in stone veneer, but I would imagine that there's a whole side to it that is really big. And it sounds like starting in 2005, I can just imagine what you went through in like 2008 and 2009. So would you mind taking us through that?
I wish I didn't have to imagine that again sometimes. You know, it was really interesting. My schooling was in entrepreneurship. And when I graduated, I actually had been working at a bank part-time while I was going to school, and they offered me a job to go into their training program. And I actually turned it down because really my focus was rodeo at the time, and I didn't want a job to interfere with that. So, you know, later on that year, my wife and I had a kid on the way, and I thought, you know, maybe there is a point I need to take some responsibility and grow up a little bit. So I went back to the bank, and they still brought me on. But I had great mentors at the bank, and mentors have been huge for me all my life. And one of my bosses there, it was one day I told him, you know, I'm interested in becoming a bank manager. And it was that afternoon, he was in my office helping me work out a plan on how that was going to happen, the training I needed and whatnot. And it happened. And, you know, he's also the one that got me started in personal development, reading books and whatnot. And then when I became a bank manager, I had the opportunity where I was also doing a lot of business loans and stuff. And it really gave me the opportunity to sit down with entrepreneurs and see what they were doing and learn from them and see what they did right, see what they did wrong. And I loved that part of my job. And one day I was sitting in one of my clients' offices, and he had become a friend, and he knew that I had that entrepreneurial spirit, and he was building homes at the time, and he had a catalog on his desk for stone veneer. And he says, you know, this is something you should figure out. And, you know, a lot of times when you talk to entrepreneurs, they started a business because they were in something and it developed into their business. And I had no business in the stone industry. But when we talked about it, I realized there was an opportunity there. And I ended up finding someone that was in Missouri that would allow me to come there and do some training and learn how to get into the manufacturing process. And so I went down there, and I remember after that training, I was sitting in the airport in Dallas, ready to go home, thinking to myself, you know what, this is so much easier than I thought it would be. This is going to be a snap. We're going to go home. We're going to kill it. And there's a specific color that I had in mind that I wanted to create to begin with. In fact, it was one of my competitors' colors, and it was called Dakota Brown. And so that was the whole plan. I was going to go home, make this rock that I had figured out in this training. And, you know, very, very first rock Kodiak Mountain Stone ever produced would probably sit on my shelf the rest of my life. Right. And so I got home, and we went through this whole process. And, you know, and when you make it, you pour the concrete into molds, and then the next day you take it out and whatnot. And I went there that next day ready to take out this beautiful stone and get going with this new business. And I took it out, and that stone was pink. And you know, going from sitting in the airport in Dallas thinking this is a snap to the next 6 months of probably the steepest learning curve of my life, I found out pretty quick that it wasn't a snap, because, you know, whether it was the coloring or how you produce a stone to make sure that you're dealing with things like freeze thaw and strength test and all those different things, it was a very steep learning curve. But it was definitely a thing that I learned a lot from a business standpoint, from a stone standpoint. And then, like you say, it really, you know, as we started out, we were a manufacturer and we were looking for distribution, and that's what we did. But in 2006, I opened my second factory, which was in Utah, and things were going really good. And then 2008 hit, and things really kicked us in the butt. And what we ended up doing is kind of doing a pivot where we put our focus back up in Canada, and we opened our own locations as well. So we were selling direct. And at that time, what I also did was brought in a lot of my competitors' products. And so we weren't just selling our product in the store, and we got into natural stone and brick and stucco and those sort of things. And as terrible as that situation was, there was sure a lot to be learned from it from a business standpoint, and the experience as an entrepreneur, everything from being in the manufacturing to dealing with distributors to customers and all the different things. It's been an incredible learning experience. But we've had to continue to pivot a number of times. In the end of 2017, we actually had decided to get out of the manufacturing. And the reason for that was when we first brought in some of our competitors' products, it was kind of, they'd do it with an eyebrow raised, thinking, what are these guys doing? They're our competitors, and they say they're going to sell our stuff. But after some time, realizing that we were legitimately no hidden agenda, the relationships came together, and we got to the point and realized it's really hard for a small manufacturer like us to compete with the big ones when it comes to economies of scale and everything. And we just decided to get out of the manufacturing, and now we're just strictly in the distribution side of the business.
So do you distribute to like a lot of different stores? Is that kind of the idea, or do you have main hubs that you deliver to, or how does that?
So we've kind of taken a regional approach where we do have our own locations. Like, for example, in Alberta, we've got our main location in Lethbridge, and then we do have smaller stores, hardware stores, rock yards, stuff like that buy from us, and we'll ship out from those locations.
It sounds like it was a pretty big process, I would imagine. So how did you build your team when you were building your team out? Like, how was that process? So you came on, did you have a partner at the beginning, or you still have a partner? Like, how did that work? And then how did you decide as you got bigger, like bringing on, I would imagine in that kind of skilled field that you would have to bring in some pretty skilled individuals, like specialized talent.
It was actually really interesting. As a partner, it was actually ended up being a mentor of mine, which was my client from the banking industry. He came in as a partner and still continues to this day as one. He brought in some of his contacts as investors and whatnot. And it started really small. It started as me building tables in a factory to start this production process, and had another partner come in and help get everything rolling. And started out, I think we had 3 high school kids helping us out in the production area, getting things going. And, it's kind of like what most entrepreneurs will do when they start a business is they try to do everything themselves to begin with. And not necessarily because I was the best at it, but that's what I could afford. And so I was making the stone, I was selling the stone, I was doing the accounting and all those different things. But as things started to come together, and we started to get some cash flow and stuff, it allowed me to start looking at things differently. And one of the challenges I had was actually letting go of some of those things, thinking I'm the one that knows how this is supposed to happen. No one's going to come in and do it better than me, so I've got to handle everything. But it got to a point where I couldn't do that. I had to offload some of these things. And the cool part about that was, and it was definitely a huge lesson for me, is when I did that, they actually did a lot better job than I did. And it made me realize that, I didn't want to let go. But once I did, I realized we could be more efficient. I could be focusing on the things I'm good at. And what I thought I was doing that no one else could do as good as me, it was getting done a lot better. And so go ahead.
I find that interesting because I think, that's what I found so interesting lately is it doesn't really matter what business, if you're trying to build a business, you go through the same things, and I think for me, letting go, I had to be okay in my mind with it. How did you get okay in your mind with letting go? Like, what was there like a certain point that you said, you know what, this is where I can, like for me, I said, 80-20. If somebody can do it as good as me, if not better, 80%, then I'll let it go. And I would look for someone to do it 80%. But what I found out is exactly what you found out, because I was doing 10 things and they were focusing on one. They didn't just do it. They may not have done it exactly how I would do it 100%. They would do it maybe 80% of how I would have done it. But that other 20% was efficiency was 150% of how they did it. So
exactly.
how did you kind of get over the hurdle in your mind to let go?
I didn't have a clear vision saying, oh yeah, this is going to work and it's going to be great. It was more of a forced thing because I only had 24 hours in a day. I couldn't do everything that I wanted to do. And so bringing someone in, and it first was bringing someone in as helping in the office and to focus on a few things. And when I realized how good she was doing at it, then I could release some of the bigger things that I was scared to release. And just like that, realizing I really didn't like doing that anyways. And she's doing a lot better job than me. But then I think the biggest epiphany for me was when we'd been operating for a while, and if I could go back and make any changes, this is the change I would have made, is bringing in my numbers guy a lot sooner than I did, because I always looked at, bringing in this CFO, I can't afford it, and put that off. I put that off. And then when we brought Dave in, the impact he had immediately was just, like I say, an epiphany that I thought, where has this been? We've needed this from day one. And, if we would have done that sooner, would have saved a lot of pain, would have saved a lot of money, and really changed things, because it really was amazing. Even not just on what he did from the accounting perspective, he looked at our production operation, and had such an impact, because we figure everything out on a cost per square foot. How much does it cost produce per square foot, and all these different things. And just with his systems that he implemented and the strategies he put in place, we were able to change things so quick and become more profitable in the manufacturing because of that. And so that's one thing I wish I would have done sooner, is bring in the numbers guy sooner, because I'm not a numbers guy.
And did he have a lot of experience in that when you hired him?
He had zero experience in the stone industry.
Okay.
But he's also, he's a numbers guy. He's an accountant, but he's got that entrepreneurial spirit behind him, that he enjoys small business. He did have experience working with small businesses, but his biggest thing is he really enjoys the strategy part of putting systems in place and figuring out how to do that really great. And he's done excellent. His name's Dave Olson, and he's done such a tremendous job of that. When he did that with us, he quickly worked himself out of a job, because everything he needed to do all of a sudden turned into a system, and he had everything figured out. And so what he's actually done is he's created a company called Nimble, which he does CFO work for a lot of people now. And it's been really good, because he can put systems in place for a company, and it might take him some time to get that set up. But once it's set up, he can kind of step back and let the systems run.
So he learned a lot working in that position as well, enough that he could
Absolutely.
go. And I would imagine too that, when you went to bring him on, you probably were worried about, like, how am I going to pay him? Where is this money going to come from? And,
exactly.
And really, he paid for himself, right? Because of how great he was. And I think,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's another key too, is, as you grow, it's really hard to take that leap to pay for really good talent. But usually if they're that good, they pay for themselves. They really do.
Yeah.
As you grew, was there anything that you had to let go that became really hard to let go of?
Part of that was I've got a couple guys that run my Lethbridge operation that have been with me for a long time, and they know it inside and out, and they are really good. And I stayed quite directly involved in a lot of the sales things, because it's something I enjoyed. I enjoyed the relationships. I enjoyed all that sort of stuff. We actually adopted a young boy from the Congo. And at that point, with that whole process, I decided I was going to spend more time at home. And that was something that I wanted to do, but I also was going to miss out on being out on the road all the time, selling and stuff like that. And so I did miss that part of it. But again, I had the guys in place that probably were doing better than I ever could anyways. And so they did really well. And I've got the opportunity, I can still do it as much as I need to or want to, and a lot of those relationships, they're up in Canada. I'm in Arizona now. So it ended up being a good transition because they're running it all up there in Canada for me now. And they're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, I'd imagine there probably was a lot of traveling involved with sales all over the country or pretty much the continent, really, right?
It really was. And especially in the beginning of 2006, because we opened the second factory in Utah. And so there was a lot of trips between Southern Alberta and Utah to oversee things. And again, it's going back to, I'd mentioned that my boss when I was in the banking got me into personal development and stuff. I remember reading Good to Great. And I just kept thinking that, getting the right people on the bus in the right seats. And fortunately, we were able to do that pretty good. And the ones that weren't in the right seats or shouldn't be on the bus, we were able to get them out fairly quickly. And it really turns into, I think, the success that we did see anywhere was based on the people that we got in the positions they were in.
That makes sense. I think it really does. I found it interesting that you mentioned earlier about self-development and then mentioning Good to Great. What do you find in your war chest for self-development? What do you do on a regular basis, and what's your some of your favorites out there?
I really love it. I remember going back when he first got me into it and listening to Tony Robbins one time talking about reading 700 books in a year. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. If it works for Tony Robbins, I'll do it. Well, no, I didn't come close to reading 700 books in a year, but it really got me into reading. And, there's so many good books out there that I can just go on and on about. But, obviously some of the classics that probably have had the biggest impact on me are Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends, Influence People, all those. But then yet the ones that I think that I probably get, now that I'm doing a lot more coaching, not only the experiences I had building Kodiak Mountain Stone have helped me so much in that, but, works from things like Tony Robbins, and biographies and autobiographies have a huge impact. You read things like Shoe Dog or Elon Musk autobiography, and you realize that, you look at companies like Nike and realize they went through some of the cash struggles that I've gone through, and how did they get through it? And, Elon Musk talking about when they didn't know how they were going to meet payroll. And it brings things into perspective when you're looking at someone like Elon Musk thinking, oh, it must have been simple for him, and realize that they had the same struggles and they had to figure out how to get through it, just like you're trying to get through it. And so those are definitely some big books to me. And I really like listening to biographies and autobiographies and learning from that. But then there's also, Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets and stuff like that, that I think regardless of what business you're in, you can learn a lot from books like that. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. It seems through COVID, I've been listening to more podcasts. Audible books are a big thing for me.
Yeah, no, I think you're so right. For me, I always talk about how I didn't go to college, and then I worked with a bunch of college-age kids when I was like 28, and they would need off on the weekends, and I would say, what do you need off for? And they said, well, I've got to read this book and do a report. And the next week it was like the same story. And I'm like, man, I'm going to put myself through college. And I just started reading and if I want to learn about whatever it was, self-finance or negotiating, and then for some reason, all these books would mention Think and Grow Rich. Like, the author would mention that book. And then I read Think and Grow Rich and everything changed. And that was, that was it for me. But I've been such a student as well. Like, I think it's so important to self-development. And I try to, at least once a year, try and go out to some type of seminar and learn from somebody that maybe I've read their books over and over again. And I think it's just, like you said, the audiobooks are key, especially for somebody who's always driving, from place to place. Like you can put it you can gain a lot of knowledge, and then when your mind starts to shut off, you can go ahead and put the music back on, and when you're ready to learn, you turn it back on. I mean, it's just, I definitely have turned my vehicle into the college education as well. So I think it's important. I think that's what sometimes is important for the entrepreneurs to know is, as people are trying to build their businesses, sometimes I think people think that after high school or college, the learning stops. And
right.
And then they say, well, I want to open this business. I always wanted to do it. They really have no idea how, and they don't realize that you just have to keep learning. Like, that's the whole thing. And now YouTube and Google, I mean, you literally can learn anything from anyone. It's really amazing. But
there's so much out there. Yeah,
there's so much out there. And I think the other part, that I would say we probably have in common is, when you mentioned mindset earlier, the mindset's so important. To me, that's the whole trick of everything, is the mindset. And the more that you can become self-aware and realize when you're thinking a certain way that's not positive, and catch yourself, that seems like where the magic really happens. You can be like, oh, wait a second, that's a thought that I don't want to think, and you replace it with something positive. But
that's funny you say that. I spoke at a international summit 2 weekends ago, and that's exactly what my topic was about. And, one of the stories I shared in there, if you know Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she talked about when she was 16 years old and her parents split, and her dad came in her room before he was leaving the house and threw Wayne Dyer's How to Be a No Limit Person cassette tapes on her bed and said, I wish I had these when I was 16 instead of 40. And she got into them. And she even said, as a kid, we'd be leaving a party and everyone would be like, oh, we don't want to go with her. She listens to all that garbage and stuff. And then here 15 years later, she's on the cover of Inc. and she says she gets some text from an old friend and said, guess we maybe should have listened to that stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you do a lot of speaking as well, Jeff?
I do occasionally. Whenever I get the opportunity to speak at different summits and stuff. I do different mastermind events and trainings and stuff like that.
So could you tell us about the mastermind that you have? It sounds like you created a mastermind group as well.
Yeah, I did. I actually, when I decided to get into coaching more, I took some more training and did some things. And one of the things I wanted to do was some masterminds. And so I was going to have a live mastermind here in Arizona. And of course, my dreams of what it was going to be were pretty big. And it was a flop. I had 4 people there, and, I was almost to the point that, should I cancel this and not do it? But I went through with it, and it was actually awesome. It was a great experience. It was way smaller than I intended, but it was also created an intimate atmosphere where we had some great conversations, and it was really good. But then after that point, I decided that I was going to do it virtual. And the whole thing for me, having a mastermind, it's bringing people from different industries together to share knowledge and experiences and stuff. And, I was at a conference once, and I was at a pivot point with Kodiak Mountain Stone. And there was a lady sitting at my table, and I had some struggles figuring out a few things on what I wanted to do. And she owned a scrapbooking company. And she told me something that day that just set off a light. And I'm like, that's what I need to do. And, who would have known I was going to figure out something for a stone company because I listened to a lady from a scrapbooking company. And so that's why I've always been a believer in networking and these mastermind events and stuff. So I created I call it my inner circle mastermind. And I've got people from Canada, different places throughout the US. And we have weekly virtual meetings, and for those that don't get on, I send them the replay and whatnot, and we have a Facebook group that they can chat in. But we just talk about different subjects, things that people are going through, how we might help one another. And really kind of the rewarding part of what I've seen through it as well is, besides a few of the people that are on it that I knew previously, none of these people knew each other before this. And constantly they're doing business with each other now. I know the lady that does websites has done websites for a bunch of them. There's a lady that has a magazine, and there's a bunch of us in the mastermind that contribute to the magazine now, and different stuff like that. So it's been really rewarding to see how they're all benefiting from one another for being in the group.
And how long have you had the mastermind group?
It's probably been about 9 months.
So you went virtual before it was cool to go virtual.
Yeah.
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 That's great. I would imagine some of the conversations during COVID, it was probably very helpful to have that group going through something like we just went through too.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some great conversations throughout
Yeah.
all that because of that. And just saying, hey, okay, you're in Texas. What are you seeing? What are they doing? And, you know, even we've got Sheldon up in Canada that he delivers bread to Costco. And we're saying, okay, here's what we're seeing down here with our retail businesses. What's happening up there in Costco and stuff like that. And really getting different perspective on things was really interesting. And really seeing people say, well, you know, I've got a situation where my client, you know, I'm in merchant services. And so I'm seeing a drop off because my clients all had to shut their stores. What are you doing? And someone else saying, well, have you thought of niching into this market and maybe talking to some of these people because they're still in business, they're still moving stuff. And so just seeing things like that where, you know, you get in situations where you can almost get so narrow focused on what your problem is that you need someone from the outside to say, well, have you thought about this? And so it's been really cool that way.
Yeah, I think the mastermind groups are super important. And I also think you mentioned mentors. Mentors has been huge to me as well. And I think you're absolutely right that a lot of times people be like, well, how do you find a mentor? And I think they work both ways. I think you can go out and seek them. And I think sometimes they find you too. But I think they're so important. And I think if you get the right one and they root for you as your success comes in, I think that's really the best part. Could you speak a little bit on mentors, how you feel, how important they are as well? It seems like that might be something that you believe in as well.
I you know, I think you can have so many mentors in so many different areas of your life. And I look at an opportunity being a basketball coach. Well, first taking a step way back to when I was a player. And I look at so many of my coaches as mentors that I went back to at different stages in my life to get their opinions on things because they were a mentor to me when I was going through high school and whatnot. And to be able to do that with my players, you know, I'm coaching high school basketball. And honestly, there is often I would have my mastermind calls and have practice right after. So I'm in our film room at the school, have our mastermind call, have just a great idea from the call, and I go sit my team down and talk about what we talked about. And so it was really cool to be able to mentor the kids that way because, you know, as a basketball coach of high school kids, you're creating players, but you're also trying to guide these kids to be great adults too. But I've always had mentors, my boss at the bank, my partner in Kodiak Mountain Stone. And I've looked at Napoleon Hill was a mentor because I didn't just read one of his books. I read it multiple times. I read other works and other things like that. And, you know, one of the things I think that got me into the coaching was because I saw the value that a mentor could bring to you and what they could do. And one of the things is I had the opportunity for a number of years in a row that I would go over to Hawaii, to BYU Hawaii, and I would work with their students on the business plan competition. I'd be able to sit down with the students, work on their business plans, and then as part of the judging committee as well. And at that school, it's cool because they also had one of the groups was kids that were doing business plans from developing countries. And, you know, to be able to work with them and, you know, they're not trying to create the next Microsoft. They're trying to create a business where they can go around their village and deliver rice. And to be able to help them on the spot. But the cool thing was being able to be staying in contact with a number of them since then. And it's been a number of years since I did this. And I still follow them and see what they're doing. And, you know, there is one individual from the Ivory Coast that he had a business plan for, it was called Well Africa, and how he was going to build schools and all these different things, and just watch him actually go out there and do these things and be able to give him some guidance and mentoring. And I really think that was a lot of the reason behind me wanting to do more coaching, is to help others and be a mentor to others as well.
It's a great way to give back too. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's important to you too, with the coaching and the mentorship. Like, definitely, it's a great way to give back.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So Jeff, I think it's been fantastic getting to know you. And I think the information you shared today was fantastic. I think for anybody on any level of entrepreneurship, I hope they were listening today, because I think there's a lot of great tips in there, and there's struggles all the time, whether it's COVID or whether it's 2008 or personal stuff that happens or whatever it may be. There's always struggles. It's just how we react and get through them. And
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to, maybe we missed, or anything else you'd like to share?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here with you and have this conversation. It's been fun, and just really appreciate it.
Great. And where can people find you?
My website is jeffheggie.com. So JEFFHEGGIE.com. And you can find out everything about my coaching, my Inner Circle Mastermind, my online programs, all that there. On Instagram, it's Jeff Heggie Coaching. Same with Facebook, all those different things. You can find my podcasts on iTunes or any of the platforms as well.
Fantastic. Jeff, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Nick.